Robert Kiyosaki's advice still valid today? He wrote his first book in 1997, almost 30 years ago. Do you guys think his advice and his framework and his concepts are still valid? What do you think?
Look, man, I've had the privilege to spend some time with Robert Kiyosaki, and I'll tell you, I've heard Robert say some wild things through the years, but I'll tell you also why that book was so impactful. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki kept it really simple. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out. Buy assets, not liabilities. That stuck with me. That was the beginning of my real estate investing. I read that book and it was said so simply. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out. Buy assets. To me, it's that simple. Real estate works that way. Real estate bought right, bought on fundamentals, that cash flow will put money in your pocket monthly and create a lot of equity over time. And when you go out and buy liabilities and things you can't afford and things that you don't need, that's going to take money out of your pocket and you're going to live a life of, in poverty. And we're in a society where that's part of the game, and you can put your money and time and energy into things that are going to pay you every month, or you can put your time and energy and money into things that are just going to suck you dry, and you're going to live, a struggling life just trying to make ends meet.
Well, I think, love him or hate him, and I know he says some off the wall things, but Robert always speaks his mind. He's always honest about what he thinks. I love that about him. I think that's admirable and respectful. I also feel like the book for me was the first time that something made sense. Like, I went to school, I went to college, I went to business school. Yeah, I learned some different things about business, but it was the first time I got some really sound financial advice. And what was interesting, it was so anti-cultural. It was so anti what I learned in my everyday life from the culture around me. And it also gave me so many answers for why so many people, or some people, do well and a lot of others don't. When I was young, I used to work at the airport. These guys would be flying airplanes on a Tuesday while everybody's working. And I read that book and I looked out at the airport, these guys flying these airplanes, and I'm like, aha, it's real estate and it's business. And I started having these conversations with these pilots and I'm like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And over again, it was like, oh, I develop. Or I started a business, kiteboarding and windsurfing is really big out here. So it's, I started a windsurfing company years ago. Or I own a ton of rental real estate. This guy flew in one time with this beautiful airplane. I go, what do you do? And he goes, not much. I'm like, what do you mean not much? He goes, I own a ton of real estate, so I don't do much. I'm like, huh. It was like the first time I was able to bridge the gap between these people that I look up to and some sort of script for how it's supposed to happen. He rewired my brain and gave me a different operating system. And from there I built off of.
Well, a lot of people also, you mentioned something, Mitch, a lot of people kind of, at least I do, they sort of associate Robert Kiyosaki with real estate because he's at real estate conferences. He's always talking real estate and a bunch of other shit these days. But he talks about business too. And that was my journey. I was dabbling in real estate. I didn't really understand how to scale. I was buying a duplex here, a house there. But when I listened to it, I was like, I'm going to start a business. And that's what I did. And that was my path. So, I think people that are listening to this, business is commercial real estate are small businesses. You increase the profitability and you get a multiple on that profitability as it equates to valuation. You can force appreciate the value of a business. You can force appreciate an apartment building or a self-storage facility, and you can create cash flow that puts money in your pocket every month. And so one thing that he said that I always remembered, he said he had a windfall. In fact, we were recording an episode for our podcast a little bit ago. He had a windfall of I think at the time, $250,000 or $500,000, whatever it was. Yeah, I don't know how he got it, but he had some cash, and they're like, and he wanted to buy a Ferrari. He's always wanted a Ferrari. I think, Robert Kiyosaki, his story, he didn't come from much. And he went out to the Ferrari dealership, looked at the Ferrari, got all excited about it, and then didn't buy it. But he said, instead, I took that money, I put $250,000 down on $1 million self-storage facility that produced cash flow. And then I took the cash flow from the self-storage facility and I went and financed a Ferrari, paid the Ferrari off over 5 years, whatever that was. And now he owns a Ferrari and he owns a self-storage building that's kicking off cash flow for the rest of his life and growing in value. I was like, boom. Wow. That was impactful for me.
I think the other thing that resonated with me so strongly when reading that book, and I mean that was literally the first book I ever read in my life, word for word, cover to cover. So it was a very impactful book for me. I mean, I was living in my friend's attic for $100 a month when I read this book, and I mentioned before, like, assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money out. It was a very simple concept. But aside from that, the other thing that really stuck with me, he was like, look, society is saying go to school, go to more school, go to more school, get a job and work for somebody else for the rest of your life. And if you do that, you'll be successful. Except for the majority of the people that do that are not living a fulfilled life. They do that because that's what their parents, that's what their teachers, that's what, society has said. That's what the status quo is. Go to school, go to more school, get highly educated, and then go work for someone else the rest of your life to make them wealthy and live an ordinary life, or a life that you don't enjoy. And I started looking around at the adults in my life, and I realized, like, the average person hated their job. The average person didn't own their time. They worked, 40 to 80 hours a week for somebody else just to get the weekends off. And oh fuck, thank God it's Friday, or man, I'm not looking forward to Monday. And they got, the weekend and 2 weeks off a year, and that was their life. And I remember thinking at a pretty young age, like, I want something more than that. And there's nothing wrong with a good, honest day of work, but if you want to live an extraordinary life and you want the freedom, I think real estate is an amazing path to create that kind of life. And I remember that really stuck with me, because all the adults that I knew, they grinded, they did what they were told was the right thing to do, but it was always paycheck to paycheck, and they were struggling. And I wanted more than that. And to me, real estate was the vehicle to create that. And it can be has been for all of us, and it can be for anyone that really believes that it can be.
Hey guys, if you like what you're hearing on the 0 to 100 podcast, come join the 0 to 100 Elite Mastermind. We have a very simple goal for you. That's replace your day job, make $120,000 a year plus in cash flow, real estate, and become a millionaire. That's it. If you like that, if that's you, click the link below, and we'll see you on the 0 to 100 Elite Mastermind.
Well, I felt a little resentful when I read it, because I thought, why didn't somebody give me this option, in school? Because I think that, like, the best thing,
They don't know.
well, but the best thing we can give our next generation, I don't think is necessarily advice to do this or that. Like, if my kids are not real estate investors, I don't care. Right. But I want them to have all the options and understand and see the different doors that they can walk through. And I feel like I stumbled upon this book, and this book opened up this door into this vast other universe. And I was like, why was I given this in school? Or why didn't someone talk about, like, so I almost had some resentment, because I was like, I just stumbled upon this on accident. I don't know how I did, but so, like, yeah, I think, like, having the option is a really big deal. If you're a nurse, or a school teacher, or whatever that is, and you love your job and you love what you do, that's amazing. I support that fully. And I love that. We need those individuals. I think where I get passionate is when people are working in something and they hate it and they don't feel like they have options. And Robert Kiyosaki gave us options, and that was a really cool thing. Now I'll plug our book here, because if you want to figure out how to play this game, you need to go get Rich Dad Poor Dad and get 0 to 100 units. Here's what it'll do for you. Rich Dad Poor Dad sets the tone. Rich Dad Poor Dad builds the mindset, installs in the very depths of your operating system a way to think about assets and the world and money, all these things. And our book takes you on a journey from literally 0 units, or wherever you are, to 100 plus units. And so for me, I'm like the ultimate kit. If you want to go just get started in this, go get those 2 books. And of course, we're biased because we wrote 0 to 100 units, but there's really nothing better. There's no other book that takes you through the journey all the way to, buying amazing, big properties, cash flow properties, and building a lot of wealth.
There is one thing I want to add, and I want to say, like, I don't think it's the teacher's fault, it's the parents' faults. I think that their intention is good. They're trying to tell you the advice that they got, or maybe advice that they didn't have, by saying, hey, go to school, get a good job. Most parents, they want the best for you. I even believe teachers, like society, they want the best for you. But the reality is, like, it's a new world. and they don't know anything else. We live in a time, like we're telling you, if you're hearing this, like, and I mean, this probably isn't that new of information for most people, but we live in a time where like there is another way and the information is out there and the network and the people that you can get around who have done it. And so if you want something different than the status quo, you want something different than go to school, more school, work for somebody else, make them rich and live an ordinary life. Like there is another way. And we're telling you and giving you that option. Like go read Rich Dad Poor Dad if you haven't. I can't imagine that many of our listeners haven't read that. And go read our 0 to 100 book because it's a framework on how to become financially free. Get out of the matrix. If you're hating your job or you
Yeah, a big reason the big reason I am who I am today is because I had amazing parents. I had amazing upbringing. I had amazing teachers and people around me that really cared. I don't think I don't think it's them to blame. I think it's a cultural thing that we all sort of accept together that there's this one path. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at is like there's a lot of different paths and like whatever the forces are, they try to force this one path and this is the one thing that's acceptable. And so when I read that other book, I was like, or the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, okay, there's this whole other path I can go down. And I think that's what I'm getting at.
but I think you can't there needs to be personal responsibility now, right? Like your parents, your teachers have taught you one thing. Now you know there's another way. So blame, like at some point you got to take some personal responsibility, blame yourself, being like, okay, I was taught this, but now I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I've read 0 to 100 units. Like I know there's another way. And if you have that information and you don't go for it, then you only have yourself to blame.
Well, the truth shall set you free. I mean, to play devil's advocate, not devil's advocate, but to elaborate on that, I don't think the teachers and the parents are to blame. I mean, they're they're delivering a message that is founded from an educational system that was built in the industrial era. During the industrial era, factories needed workers, right? Workers needed pensions. Like it was a different world.
It's the way it's designed.
Yeah, it's the way it's always been designed. I think it's outdated. And I've always said this, but like when you're in college, you're getting leveraged, right? With your tuition. When you go to a corporate America, you're getting leveraged with your hours, or you're getting leveraged by paying half your paycheck to the government. The government's leveraging you, and whatever's left you give to Wall Street, they're leveraging you. Whereas I think if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, took the blue pill or red pill or whatever, like looked at the world differently, and maybe read our book to sort of figure out a framework and take some accountability for your life, now you are no longer being leveraged. You are switching, you're flipping the script, you're going to the other side of the equation, and now you are learning leverage. You learn how to leverage banks, how to leverage investors, how to leverage assets to create wealth and passive income and cash flow that will set you free.